Hello, my name is Komang Damar, and I'm representing my college here, Sudirman and Wayan to deliver a presentation of our results that we give title Mungbean-Maize rotation, improve soil properties, and maize yield in dryland. For the introduction, that all we aware that grain production need to be increased to meet food demand because of the increasing population. That's Food and Agriculture Organization has predicted that we need to have around 30% increase of grains by 2050. And for that purpose, dryland area will play a strategic role in fulfilling the food demands, since very high rate of land conversion. And then we don't want to compete in producing maize with rice crop in the rice paddy area. Why dryland? Because we have very large dryland in Indonesia. That's around 37.5% of our terrestrial, and 20% of them can be utilized for food crops. Unfortunately, the dryland has very poor soil conditions, such as lack of C organic, low of N, P and K, and as well as low water holding capacity. For maize crop to be able to have good yield in dryland, we usually, or farmer usually, provide very high input, and with high input and intensive cropping management for maize in dryland, we have very high potential loss of carbon organic from soil. It's typical of dryland areas in North Lombok. The previous studies shows that Mungbean residues can improve soil properties. Unfortunately, in dryland of North Lombok, Mungbean are rarely grown by farmers. That's why the purpose of this study is to study Mungbean-Maize rotation in improving soil properties and maize yield. We have two rotation, Mungbean and maize. The first rotation, but both rotation were done in the same location in Gumantar. This is the soil properties when we started the experiment. The pH is okay, but all the C organic and total soluble P and exchangeable K is were considered very low. And Mungbean first grown from April to June 2019. We grew extension seed of variety FIMA 1. The rate of or the population 250, 375, and 5,000 plant per hectare, combined with desiccation time at 28 and 35 days after sowing. So they plant the crops were desiccated at these days, and with this treatment we form 7 treatment with 3 replication. Of course, this 2 times 3 plus control treatment, and replicated 3 times and arranged in randomized block design. Maize seed were planted at 9 per square meter in June, and the plot size about 17.5 square meter, and the harvested in September 2019. For the first rotation result, it's already submitted elsewhere for publication. In this study, we reported the second rotations that we grew Mungbean again in the second year with 2 types of seed, extension seed and stock seed, and the same variety. The Mungbean were planted in October to December 2019, exactly in the same place for the density. And then the mung bean pod harvested in December, and soon after harvest, the residues were incorporated to the soil along with soil preparation for the maize. 3 weeks after incorporation of mung bean residue in January 2020, exactly 11 January 2020, maize seed were planted in the same density as before, so 9 plant per square meter, in the plot size 17.5 square meter, and were fertilized with urea 500 kg per hectare and Ponska, NPK Ponska, that's 15-15 or 15% of NP and K, with the doses 380 kg per hectare. Variable measured were plant height and soil properties that at tasseling, and yield component at harvest date on the 25th of April 2020. This was the mung bean before harvest, and this is the performance of the maize rotated with mung bean. Unfortunately, during the growing period of the maize that we sown on the 11th of January around here, received very little water in the beginning of the growing season, and as well as after flowering around March in here up to the kernel fillings, there's very little water. This affect the performance of the crops. The result is obvious, which is mung bean biomass, of course, increase with the population density per square meter, and then total N not much increase up to the 2050 plant per hectares, but the significant improvement in total N improved from 375,000 plant per hectare, but the available P in the soil improved significantly, start from the 250,000 plant per hectare, as well as the available potassium K in the soil. For the NPK total in the maize leaf tissue, for N improved significantly with the increase of residue, but not for P. The P, total P increased only after the population density 375,000 per hectare. Some research earlier showed that the P uptake by maize is really depend on the genotype. This possibly that the genotype, the BC18 that we grow in the lack of rainfall condition, didn't really uptake P well. So P in leaf tissue is not really high as compared to N and K in the soil. And this highly correlated with the plant height, that the plant height performance is not really good, and some studies saying that this is really related with the P absorption as well as the maize biomass. So that's very highly related to total P in the leaf tissue. For the yields here and yield component are all affected by the rotation, especially with the higher density of the mung bean. So significant improvement, around 44.7 improvement in yield compared to the highest density of the mung bean when we rotated them. So it is a good sign, but unfortunately the yield is not really high. That's due to lack of good performance during the early growth of the maize, as well as during the grain filling. So even though there's a very high improvement in yield, but in total with 17.5 square meter of land, with this amount of yield is around 8 ton or less than 8 ton per hectare. That's not really good actually. For the conclusion, Mungbean-Maize rotation system improves soil chemical properties. It's very significantly, but N is the lowest, only by 52.6%, but K is the highest, 282.9%, and for K it is by 110%. The highest improvement was achieved at 500,000 plant of mung bean per hectare. The highest improvement in yield was also gained from this population, 500,000 plant of mung bean per hectare. The improvement by 44.7% compared to control treatment. The 44.7% in yield improvement is considered low, even though the percentage high, but the total yield is considered low because of the suboptimal growing conditions, lack of rainfall. This crop rotation system need to be continued to improve soil properties because the high improvement of soil properties and increase maize yield in dryland area, and we expect the higher improvement in yield when the plant grown in the optimal condition. Thank you very much.